I thank you very much, Dr. Skoulos, and it's again a pleasure to have you all here and um, inform you about the current situation in the Mediterranean, which is the basis of our research here as the Hellenic Centre for Marine Research. Um, this presentation will be about the biodiversity in the Mediterranean. It will include some information on the species, on the habitats, and also on the challenges that this sea is facing in the next decades. And I have squeezed this presentation to fit in 30 minutes. The general outline is an introduction to the Mediterranean ecosystem, some information about the key benthic habitats and communities, and also some mention on the threats, challenges, and conservation needs for the Mediterranean. And there was also a part about our research activities, but I decided to skip this part just to provide a more elaborate introduction on the Mediterranean status. So, the Mediterranean, as the name implies, both in Latin and in Greek, is the center of the world. And this is quite obvious because in the beginning of the Western civilization, the Mediterranean was truly the center of the world. All the known civilizations were circulating this enclosed sea. And of course, the Mediterranean was a hub for trade and for ideas, for civilization. More or less, this situation remains also in the present years. So the Mediterranean encompasses 21 modern states, is still an important hub globally for international economy and trade, is one of the top tourist destinations in the world with 200 million visitors each year. And all these peculiarities render it a complex geopolitical status, which has important implications for the management and conservation, as we will see later on. Now, some basic features. First of all, the Mediterranean is the biggest enclosed sea in the world. It is subdivided in many zones, but the only thing I want you to keep in notice is that it's connected with the Atlantic Ocean through the Strait of Gibraltar to the west. It's also connected to the Black Sea through the Sea of Marmara in the east. And lately, in the 19th century, there has been a third opening through the Suez Canal with the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. So the Mediterranean connects two major oceans and another enclosed sea, a very productive enclosed sea, which is the Black Sea. It is also a deep enclosed sea, likely in contrast to the Baltic, let's say, which is shallow. So the dark gray areas here are depths below 3,000 meters. So it's quite deep. It has a very shallow coastal shelf, and the bulk of the sea is a deep one. Now, regarding the circulation, the Mediterranean has a complex circulation pattern, but the only thing necessary to remember is that there is a constant influx of seawater from the Atlantic through the Gibraltar Strait. This water enters and travels all through the Mediterranean to the east. And this happens superficially. As this water travels, it gets more saline because of evaporation. So it sinks. And then it goes all the way up and exits again through the Suez Canal, but this time deeper. So if we have a vertical section of the Mediterranean, this is the western basin, this is the eastern basin. I forgot to tell you before that there is an important subdivision right here, which is the Strait of Messina, the Strait of Sicily. This strait divides the Mediterranean in the western basin and the eastern basin. Why this is important? Because these two basins have discrete characteristics, and we will see why this is important later on. So, the Mediterranean is not uniform. It is characterized by strong environmental gradients. And one environmental gradient regards the primary production, the productivity of the sea, how rich is the water. So as we can see, the western part is generally more productive, more eutrophic, while the eastern basin is characterized as oligotrophic. It's nutrient poor. But this is not true for all locations, because as we see, the Marmara Sea and the Black Sea are quite productive. So this influx goes in the North Aegean and creates a productivity location there, a productivity hotspot. This is also true for the Nile Delta. So the Nile produces nutrients and reaches the Mediterranean, and these nutrients travel all the way up to the Levantine Sea. So this is quite complex, and all of these have effects to the biodiversity patterns, as we will see later on. Another important gradient is the temperature gradient. In general, the Western Mediterranean is cooler than the Eastern Mediterranean. Please observe that the Gibraltar Strait and the coasts of Syria are actually on the same latitude, but yet they have different seawater temperature regimes. And this difference is quite big. It's almost 10 degrees Celsius. And this is average temperature for all the year round. So, the Mediterranean is considered a biodiversity hotspot. It hosts 17,000 marine species, which are species that live exclusively in the sea. Many of them are invertebrates, and some of them are fish. And also some of them are plants, as we will see later. And it contributes to 7% of the global marine biodiversity. This is quite an important percentage. Now, what is happening with the biodiversity gradients in the Mediterranean? Again, they're not uniform. In general, the Western Mediterranean is considered more biodiversity rich than the poorer Eastern Mediterranean. But again, this is not uniform. For example, we see that the Aegean and the Ionian Seas are still important biodiversity hotspots. And then, this is the general picture. This is the total biodiversity of marine species. What happens if we break this biodiversity into smaller components? Let's say what happens with invertebrate species diversity. We can see that there are many invertebrate biodiversity hotspots gathered around the Mediterranean. So the picture here is more diverse. As regards fish species diversity, yes, here the Western Mediterranean is much richer, and this is due to the influx of species through the Gibraltar Strait. These species move, but usually they do not pass all the way to the Eastern Mediterranean because they need food. So they stay here. And if we take marine mammals and marine turtles, we see that the most important hotspot is the Aegean Sea, the Ionian Sea, and the coasts of Israel and Lebanon. Now, regarding the latter, which are a very important component of the Mediterranean biodiversity, there are two emblematic species. We all know about them. It's the Mediterranean monk seal, Monachus monachus, which once used to be ubiquitous throughout the Mediterranean and in the Atlantic African coast. Then in the 70s, some remnant populations remained in the Western Mediterranean, and now, currently, the bulk of the population, about 300 individuals, are located in the Aegean Sea, the Ionian Sea, and in the coasts of Turkey and Syria. There are some small populations in the Alboran Sea, in Madeira, in Africa, in the Atlantic coast of Africa, but as you can see, there are just a few individuals. So the bulk of the population is in the Eastern Mediterranean. And the same applies for the loggerhead turtle, the Caretta caretta, which is also abundant throughout the Mediterranean, but the nesting places, the places where the regeneration of the population takes place, are located in mainly the Ionian Sea. And especially the single small island of Zakynthos hosts 26% of the total Mediterranean nesting population. And of course, the National Marine Park of Zakynthos is established there specifically to protect this emblematic species. So let's move now from species and organisms to habitats. What are habitats? They are the formations that allow the species to exist, or the assemblages of species that form specific seascapes. Many can consider the marine seafloor as something uniform and monotonous, but the truth is far from that. So the marine seafloor has a specific zonation, and it has to do with specific environmental patterns applying to its location, and also to the topographic features such as the inclination or the habitat or the substrate, sorry. So one of the most typical environmental habitats is the seagrass habitat, and mainly the Posidonia oceanica habitat. Posidonia oceanica is a native plant occurring only in the Mediterranean, and it's forming these extensive meadows, which are ubiquitous in many parts of the Mediterranean. It's also a protected species, protected by European and national legislations. So as we can see on the map, Posidonia is quite ubiquitous on the northern part of the Mediterranean, the whole coast. It's always there as long as the conditions, the local conditions and the substrate allows it to exist. And of course, because it has a three-dimensional complexity, it provides refuge to marine organisms, so it hosts biodiversity. It is a biodiversity hotspot. Here you can see the endangered bivalve, the noble pencil. It's Pinna nobilis. It's a bivalve that recently has almost disappeared from the Mediterranean. And one could usually find it among the shoots of the Posidonia meadows. But apart from hosting biodiversity, Posidonia provides an important ecosystem service, as we call them. So Posidonia grows vertically. It's an annual plant, and each year of succession provides a new layer, and each new layer accumulates and creates this Posidonia mat. This is actually a reef made of dead Posidonia as it grows in time. So this mat can be really high. This one is 2 or 3 meters, but there have been records of 13 meters, let's say, which goes back like 6,000 years in the past. And this mat is especially carbon-rich. So what it does, it stores the carbon. The plant accumulates in time, and it actually mitigates also the CO2 that the human civilization emits in the atmosphere. So it's an important carbon sink, especially these days that we are trying to minimize our carbon footprint. And thus it provides a very important service, and it's a really important reason for the protection of this Mediterranean habitat. But apart from seagrasses, there are also other Photophilus algae that dwell in the euphotic zone, the zone of the seafloor where light is abundant. So this algae, I'm giving you here 2 very typical species for the Mediterranean. On the left is Cystozeira, and on the right is Sargassum. These algae form a canopy. They're like the forest inland. It's a similar kind of forest in the sea, so they're called marine forests now. And this canopy provides shelter for marine organisms. So wherever there is this canopy, there is an increased biodiversity. But in the past, let's say 10 or 15 years, we have the phenomenon of marine deforestation, especially in the Eastern Mediterranean. So what happens is that areas that were a place for these algal formations are becoming barrens. The plants, the algae, gradually disappear, and what we have left is this extensive formation of bare rock. There is nothing there. it's a marine desert. If you swim along it, you see no fish, you see no invertebrates, you see almost nothing. It's like it's exactly like the desert. And this phenomenon is getting more and more intense in the current years. So who is responsible for this? Directly, it's the increasing population to a herbivorous fish that was introduced in the Mediterranean many years back, but has increased their populations lately. So this has been experimentally proven because with these cages here, researchers have excluded specific parts of the substrate from grazing from these herbivorous species, and they saw that after just 5 months, the algae grew back. So what this shows us is that there is a capacity for regeneration in the system. The system is not doomed. The potential is there, but the pressure is continuously applying, so the system cannot regenerate. And this is really important to highlight the importance of conservation, as I will tell you later on.